Welcome to Nursing 508, Advanced Research and Scholarly Inquiry for Advanced Nursing Practice, Module 10. This week I'm going to focus on what I believe to be the most difficult aspect of this process that began with your PCOT question and will end with a compilation of your EBP SOS paper, the synthesis of the research literature. Although the above steps won't necessarily occur in order, typically you'll go through analysis of some studies and back to more literature research and review, and then back again. This PowerPoint will focus on the process of synthesizing the research literature and formulating your paper. If you don't perform the critical analysis of the research literature correctly and thoroughly, then you will have difficulty with your synthesis. The literature review matrix will greatly ease both your analysis and synthesis of the research literature. If you have taken the time to correctly assemble your matrix, then you should have a good understanding of the existing current literature on your topic by the time you're done. The various aspects of each study, such as methodologies, samples, findings, should be known to you and visible in your matrix. By examining a well-done matrix, you can see the similarities and differences among the various studies and begin to understand where the strengths and weaknesses lie. Each synthesis will vary depending upon the topic on which it is written. It is easier to describe what a synthesis is not than what it is, because each one will be unique. Do not say study A says blah blah blah, study B says blah blah blah, and study C says blah blah blah. You will want to speak to the body of studies as a whole or in groups. For example, when synthesizing the research literature on rural nurse recruitment and retention, I may say, the research reveals that nurse vacancies in critical access hospitals occur more frequently and take an average of 60% longer to fill than those at urban facilities. Specific causes for high turnover in rural settings are not identified in the current literature. However, nurse empowerment and working environments appear to positively influence nurse retention in urban settings. The vast majority of the research on rural nurse recruitment and retention hails from Australia and Canada and is comprised of qualitative studies. The need exists for additional quantitative research performed in the rural United States to further understand the issue of rural nurse recruitment and retention within the United States. That is a very short version of what the body of your 14-page paper will be, but it gives you some idea of the type of information to include. You'll speak to what you found in the research, what the similarities and differences were among the various studies and their parts, and what is lacking in the literature. The research on some topics will vary greatly in the methodologies utilized, while others will be heavily represented by one methodology or another. For example, if you have located and analyzed research on your topic that includes randomized controlled trials and descriptive qualitative studies with similar findings, then you would note that those findings are well supported by a variety of research methodologies. However, if the research on your topic consists only of randomized controlled trials or only descriptive studies, then you would note that, if only RCTs, that the meaning of the findings remain a gap in knowledge. If only descriptive studies, then you would note that high-level evidence supporting the findings of the descriptive studies is lacking. Likewise, if the samples for the vast majority of the studies in your review are compiled of middle-class, middle-aged white males, then you will note that the findings may or may not be generalized to diverse sample populations, and that is a gap in the knowledge. If the studies utilize a variety of tools to measure one of your variables, then you will discuss the strengths and weaknesses of those tools and how their use may have impacted the study results. Examining the various aspects of the multitude of research studies, hopefully lined out nicely for you in your matrix, will give you an idea of the similarities, differences, strengths, and weaknesses of the research literature. The matrix should provide you with an overview that will allow you to make sense of a larger amount of information. Next, look at the research studies as a whole. What is known about your topic? What additional questions have been discovered? What gaps exist, and how might these be addressed? Remember when synthesizing the research literature to discuss both the findings of the studies and the research methodologies utilized in those studies. The ultimate goal of your synthesis and your paper is twofold. One, you want to determine and communicate the state of the science knowledge in your area of interest. 2, You want to provide a new perspective on your area of interest gleaned from the ideas in the research literature. I'm not saying that you need to come up with some grand idea that no one in nursing has ever had, but you are a unique person with unique experiences and knowledge, and you will have spent a good deal of time getting to know the research on a topic of interest. And you will come away with a new, deeper understanding of the state of the science and a new perspective of the topic. Be sure to share that perspective in your synthesis. Don't forget to address gaps in our current knowledge. Identifying them isn't enough, though. You'll want to discuss potential ways of addressing those gaps. Much of what we view as well-supported research has never been replicated among diverse populations. If that is the case with your topic, then you should include a recommendation for future studies with samples comprised of diverse populations. If the research on your topic consists of limited methodologies or designs, then your recommendation should be for a wider variety in future research on the topic. If additional questions are raised by the studies, then you should recommend additional research to address those questions. Finally, don't forget to address the significance of the research to nursing, specifically advanced practice nursing, if possible. How will or should the findings from your review, analysis, and synthesis impact practice? How will the future research you're recommending influence practice? These are very crucial questions that each of you should address in your paper. Please be sure to review the guidelines, the rubric, and the sample papers. It is important for you to understand the expectations and grading criteria, and to post any questions you have under the course communication tab so that all can benefit from the information. Determining how to format your paper can be a difficult starting point. Your literature review matrix can help you identify what aspects to address. Chapter 6 in the Gerard text does an excellent job of explaining how to utilize the matrix to guide the writing of your synthesis. Don't forget, though, that there are specific course guidelines for the paper that are not addressed by Gerard. I would strongly encourage you to read Chapter 6 carefully and thoroughly, apply Gerard's instructions, and then review again the guidelines for the paper and the grading rubric. Both are provided under the Course Resources tab. The guidelines are compiled in a format that you can follow for your paper. Even if you are utilizing the outline and the assignment guidelines to format your paper, you may still struggle with how to organize the synthesis section. Your topic may lend itself to one organizing category or another. If you found that the research on your topic has built upon prior research and consistently grown stronger over the years, then perhaps you should organize your synthesis in chronological order. If, on the other hand, the research you reviewed began with descriptive studies and progressed more recently to randomized controlled trials, then you may want to organize your synthesis by methodology. Whatever organization makes sense to you and makes the flow of your paper logical. Sometimes it is the little things that can be the most troublesome, like coming up with new verbs to use when reporting on the research findings. Here's a list that you may find helpful. You might want to print this slide off while you're writing your paper. These are the necessary characteristics of a well-written paper, ABP-SOS paper anyway. Your topic needs to be focused, not broad, but not too narrow. The studies you report on should be closely related to your topic. The flow of your paper should be logical. Utilize headings and subheadings and provide transitional sentences when moving from one section to another within a subheading. Generally speaking, every paper, section, and paragraph should follow this format. Tell the reader what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. That's like another take on the whole formatting of introduction, body, and conclusion. That's basically what you do throughout the whole paper. Be sure that you have fully developed the knowledge regarding your topic of interest. Readers of your paper should feel confident that they know what is known about your topic and not feel as if part of the story is missing. You should address studies that have been published within the last 5 years. If you include older studies, you should explain why they warrant inclusion and how they are significant to the current knowledge on your topic. Synthesizing the research literature and compiling an ABP-SOS paper can be a difficult process. However, if you utilize the many resources available to you, then the process will be surmountable. I encourage you to follow the steps outlined regarding the research analysis and matrix formation. Taking shortcuts up front will cause you much difficulty in the long run. If you chose a topic that truly interests you, then the process should be informative and maybe even a little bit fun. It's exciting to see what research has been done on a topic of interest, get to know that literature, consider its impact on nursing practice, and present a new perspective. Remember to utilize your text as resources as you proceed through the critical analysis and matrix creation. The Grove, Burns, and Gray book provides good information on the various aspects of research such as methodologies, samples, variables, etc. The Gerard text talks you through the creation of a literature review matrix and utilizing it to compile your synthesis. The assignment guidelines provide specific instructions to follow as you create your paper, and the rubric describes expectations and grading criteria that you will want to be aware of beforehand. Classmates will provide peer review of your draft paper, and I am always available to answer questions as you progress through the process. If you have a question, odds are that at least one of your classmates does too, so please post it under the course communication tab so all can benefit. Over the next several weeks, as you continue to work on your draft paper, we will discuss in more detail various aspects of the research process. Thanks. Have a good week.